Actually, Representative Rich, the Supreme Court has routinely upheld the viability standard. Routinely.
Well, not really
routinely.
Way.
And from Roe v. Wade all the way up to Casey versus Planned Parenthood, they continue to say that viability means when the fetus can sustain life on its own. That's what the standard has been. And intentionally, they did not go into any scientific evidence as we're going in now to avoid the conversation that we're having on the floor today. The reason why they determined viability as being able to sustain life on its own is because at the time it was something they could test for. This evidence that we're citing today is at best inconclusive because we can have other evidence that suggests the exact opposite of what you're saying right now. And so one of the things that we quite often engage in when we bring forth scientific evidence is there can be just as credible evidence presented from the opposing position. So sometimes
I would disagree with that. I know you would agree with what you're saying, but I would disagree with it.
All right, so on its face, do you think that this legislation is constitutional?
I think there's a good possibility that it is, and
what do you?
If I may answer a question that was brought up earlier about the lawsuits and all of that. It's my understanding that the Nebraska law is going to be challenged in court or is being challenged in court, and this bill is almost identical to the Nebraska law, and if Nebraska's law is challenged in court and it goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, Nebraska will bear that cost. Alabama will not bear any of that cost.
No, actually,
so as far as the cost,
Representative Rich, that's actually not true. Because wherever the activity occurs, if a lawsuit is instituted, we have to defend ourselves. So we just become a paying party to a lawsuit.
Based on the Nebraska law and not the Alabama law, it'll go on Nebraska.
Representative Rich, what generally happens in a process like this is when a lawsuit is filed in a state like Nebraska, other states file what's called amicus briefs. In support, we pay people to file those briefs and come up with those briefs. Can a fetus suffer pain but not be viable?
I believe so.
Okay, so a fetus can suffer pain but not be viable. But the point I'm trying to make to you is if you suggest here that a fetus can feel pain but not be viable, that means that you believe your own bill is unconstitutional because the standard is viability, not whether or not the fetus can feel pain. And the reason it was decided that way so we don't have to engage in the discussions that we are right now. And as a matter of fact, we don't have to engage in this discussion because Nebraska has already undertaken this cause. Now I understand
that is your view, and that may be your legal view, but that is not my view.
No, that's not my legal view. That's Supreme Court precedent.
Well, then why did Justice Kennedy in his decision in Casey talk about a child being ripped out of its mother's womb and feeling pain? Why did he talk about that?
Because he was talking about viability. And if you would go back and read the case, he again, as already explicitly laid out in a number of cases, not just Casey, but many before, where they talked about viability. Viability is different from whether or not a fetus can feel pain. It is a completely different standard. And if you pass any legislation, and I'll just explain it to you. We're talking about the woman's right to privacy. Woman's right to privacy is a fundamental right which the Supreme Court will treat with the strictest of scrutiny.
I believe the unborn child has a right to privacy, is what I believe.
So if you just want to go ahead and tell us, just tell us. My purpose here is to challenge the Supreme Court. My purpose is to have a lawsuit to change the standard. I think you're being disingenuous when you suggest that I want to pass this bill here because I think it's the right thing to do versus just I want to go ahead and challenge the federal court so they can change the law. Is that what you're trying to do?
Is that what I'm trying to do?
Yes.
Well, I think it would depend on whether or not somebody filed a lawsuit or not. If this bill passes and nobody challenges it, and it's the law in Alabama, and everybody has to abide by it, that suits me just fine. That's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Representative Rich, the bill itself, since it violates since it places in question a fundamental right.
Well, that's your view.
No, it's not my that's the Supreme Court's view. I'm not making this up as I go along.
Back in the years when I had a baby, you carried a baby for 36 weeks. Now, they're requiring that you carry, they are giving you 40 weeks. No one, I don't think there's anyone in this room would want to see an innocent fetus, killed. But let me tell you something. As we try to legislate things, we're only opening the doors of unlawful abortions. This is dangerous for so many young women. You don't understand this. If they feel as though if I go and try to have this thing done legally, they're going to deny me to do it. So what I'm going to do is go to some sister over here or some man over here, go in their bedroom, and the next thing you know, that girl is going to undergo an illegal abortion. Last week in Tuskegee, Macon County, a baby fetus was found next to a trash can. And that was done illegally. Now, why is it that that young lady couldn't carry the baby, or she couldn't go to a hospital? 9 out of 10 cases, the baby was probably older than 22 weeks. So my concern is, yes, let us all be pro-life, but at the same time, let us not sit here and legislate things that are going to encourage unlawful, unhealthy practices among young ladies.
Clerk will receive the amendment. Amendment to House Bill number 18 by Representative Mitchell.
Thank you very, very much. The amendment seeks to change the word child or children to fetus or fetuses, i.e. plural, only because it's in keeping with the basic structural growth. But the sociologists take the term child to refer to a fetus after it is born and it began to become socialized. So
He's, in this amendment, he's changing the word unborn child to fetus. I think unborn child is the way that it should be expressed in this bill. And for that reason, I move to lay the gentleman's amendment on the table.
This is my first time to the well, and I don't know of a better thing that I'd rather come to. I'm very passionate about this, and I appreciate the work that you've done.
Thank you.
There's been several things that's been mentioned today. One, for example, of choices. Of the birth mother having the choice of what she wanted to do with the child. Well, I believe all in choices, but the timing is a little different in my time of choice and theirs. The time of the choice is 9 months prior to the birth. So that's when the choice is made in my eyes. And the unwanted children, talking about children where there were many children born that are unwanted, that kind of touches base with some of the people in my family. We have a daughter that's 17 years old that we adopted. And we're very fortunate and very proud that her mother chose to go an adoption way rather than abortion. And I think the number you mentioned was 78. We'd have 78 more children last year in this state. If it were one child, that's all that matters. Cost. I saw and heard where cost was a factor. We spend a lot of money on a lot of things in this state. And this is probably the most valuable thing that we could spend. If it's worth fighting for, I'm worth spending the money to do it on this situation, because this is the future of our state and our country. And I'm afraid that we're paying some results today because of decisions that were made back in Roe versus Wade. And because of that, I move for the previous question, Mr. Speaker.
All right. All the members voted. The clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 62 ayes, 30 nays, and the previous question prevails.
Y'all gonna invoke cloture on every time we filibuster?
don't know. I can't answer things that haven't happened yet.
I want to say this to the new people here, is that when the Democrats was in the majority, I never voted to invoke closure.
You know, I was told when I came here that that was the last resort to vote closure on anybody speaking. And we always talk about our right to speak and under the United States Constitution. And we come here and we represent people that elected us to office. And then for you to vote closure because we stand to represent our constituency says an awful lot about the people who continue to vote closure. It's a sad day in the state of Alabama. You know, for a party that say they want less government, you are imposing more government with the power that you have in this body to shut down anybody that's not speaking what you want them to say. I think that the citizens of Alabama did not elect you to do that. They elected all of us to come down and handle the business of the state of Alabama, no matter how long it took. If all of us have a different opinion, that's good, because we learn from people with difference of opinions. But to continue to vote closer because we're not saying what you want us to say, or we talk about it too long, I think that says something about you as a party. Because I think that if you've ever been a woman and carried a child, and at some point in time decided that you didn't want that child, I think that's your right. But when you're out in public and you see how these mamas treat these babies, in my district, one scalded a baby just because she decided she didn't want that baby. Now, I think death is death. Either you could kill a person physically or you could kill a person mentally. And I think Representative Rogers alluded to the fact that some of these babies that are unwanted are treated so terrible because, Mr. Rich, you or nobody else going to come and adopt them. And if you're not going to save them in life, then you can at least respect them in death. And know that they did not have to go through the torment that this earth has for them, because they were born into a world that didn't have any love for them.
But if you can't sit and debate an issue, I ain't quite sure why you got elected. Or maybe you ran for the wrong office. If you aren't willing to spend the time and debate, I wish that Ms. Wiggins, let me say this. Representative Todd, I sat there and listened to her presentation, and Representative Mayor Moore just a few minutes ago. Excellent points as it relates to this bill. I believe a woman ought to have a right to choose. I don't think that government, and there are some, and that's been stated many times, there is instances where government needs to make a decision. But I wish that what we would spend our time here as a legislature is finding a way to improve the quality of life of the people of the state. And that includes helping them get jobs, that includes helping them go to work and take care of the families, and you probably won't have a need for a whole lot of the laws that we begin to criminalize. We'll begin to, in this state, we almost begin to criminalize everything that the people of the citizens of this state do.
All right, have all the members voted?
Yes.
All the members voted. All right, the clerk will lock